A cold billionaire walks into his kitchen. His cleaner is lying there, naked and unconscious. What he does next, no one saw coming. This moment changed both their lives forever. Stay with us. This story will melt your heart. Miles Hartley had everything most people could only dream of: wealth, power, and status. His name, whispered in boardrooms, carried more weight than entire empires. His signature could build towers or bury them. But despite all this, he lived in a silence louder than thunder, a stillness so sharp it could cut through the soul. The mansion he called home stood tall on a secluded hill, built from dark stone, guarded by iron gates, and surrounded by deep woods that let no sound in or out. Inside, the halls echoed like an empty cathedral. No laughter, no conversation, just the clicking of his polished shoes against the cold marble floors. Every room was perfectly cleaned, every object untouched, as if time had stopped somewhere long ago. He liked it that way, controlled, sterile, predictable. But what most didn't know was that Miles didn't just fear chaos, he feared connection. People rarely lasted long in his home. Chefs, assistants, chauffeurs, all eventually left. Some couldn't handle the pressure, others couldn't handle him, his cold demeanor, his sharp gaze, his silence that often felt like judgment. Everyone left, except one. Her name was Brina Wilson. She had been cleaning his house for nearly a year now, quietly, precisely, and without complaint. She never asked questions, never lingered in rooms too long, and never tried to speak unless spoken to. She arrived early, left on time, and worked like a shadow, present but unnoticed. And that's exactly how Miles liked it. But what Miles didn't know, what he couldn't have guessed, was that Brina saw him. Not just the suits, or the stone face, or the cold instructions. She saw the way his hand trembled slightly when he opened the door to his study, the way he paused outside his late father's library but never stepped inside, the way his voice softened, just slightly, when he said "thank you" without meeting her eyes. Brina had seen pain before. She'd lived it, carried it, cleaned around it. She recognized the loneliness masked behind sharp suits and silent rooms. And in Miles's cold blue eyes, she saw something familiar. A man who had everything except someone to care. And though she said nothing, not a word beyond the necessary, she began to clean with a gentler hand. She placed flowers in small corners where he wouldn't notice until later. She folded his shirts with extra care. She even dusted the old piano in the music room, even though no one had played it in years. Miles noticed these things, though he never said so, and something strange began to stir inside him, something unfamiliar. He found himself pausing at the sound of her soft footsteps, listening when she hummed quietly under her breath while scrubbing the tiles, wondering what color her eyes were behind that gentle downward gaze. But he didn't let himself ask, didn't let himself care, because Miles Hartley did not feel. He built walls, not windows. He locked away the past in rooms he never entered, and he buried his heart beneath stone, success, and silence. Yet the longer Brina stayed, the more those walls began to crack. He started to leave small notes for her. Use the safe gloves under the sink, or don't clean the east wing today. She started to leave little responses. A smiley face drawn in the dust on his windowsill, a perfectly folded napkin shaped like a swan on the kitchen counter. Their connection wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. It was in the silence. But this silence felt different, warmer. Sometimes Miles would stand by the tall window in his study, watching Brina leave through the side path, her simple coat hugging her frame, her head down, her walk quick and light. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he wished she'd look back, just once. She never did. But Brina Wilson, the cleaner who was meant to be invisible, had done what no one else had ever managed. She made the coldest man in the mansion start to feel alive, and neither of them had any idea how close they were to a moment that would change their lives forever. The sky outside was still a pale gray when Miles Hartley's car pulled through the gates of his estate. He hadn't planned on returning from his business trip so soon. but a sudden change in schedule and an unexplainable heaviness in his chest made him come home early. He stepped out of the sleek black car, briefcase in hand, and walked up the stone steps toward his mansion. The early morning air was crisp, but inside, the house was warmer than usual. Yet, something felt off. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, but unnatural. He set his briefcase down near the door and loosened his tie. The scent of cleaning solution still lingered faintly in the air. Lemon, with a sharp chemical bite. Odd, he thought. Brina was never here this early. He walked down the hall, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the vast echoing mansion. Then he entered the kitchen, and his heart stopped. There, sprawled across the cold marble floor, was Brina Wilson, naked, unconscious, trembling. Her pale skin was damp with sweat, her breathing shallow and ragged. Her clothes, wrinkled and damp, lay in a heap near the sink. A bottle of harsh industrial cleaning solution had tipped over, its contents seeping slowly across the floor. Time froze. Miles didn't move. Couldn't move. His brain struggled to catch up, his heart hammering against his ribs. The sight before him was raw, vulnerable, and completely out of place in the pristine, controlled world he had built. Then, without thinking, he moved. He dropped to his knees beside her, already slipping off his wool coat. He gently lifted her shoulders and wrapped the coat tightly around her fragile body, shielding her from the cold floor and the sharp chill of the room. "Brina," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Brina, wake up." Her lips were pale and her hair clung to her forehead. She shivered, even wrapped in his coat. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, then lightly tapped her cheek, panic rising in his throat. Come on, stay with me," he murmured. He reached for the phone on the counter, but stopped. She had once mentioned, barely above a whisper, that she hated hospitals, that they reminded her of things she never wanted to remember. He made a choice. Scooping her gently into his arms, he carried her out of the kitchen, the scent of chemicals clinging to her skin, to her hair. He brought her to the guest suite, one of the only rooms with soft carpeting and a fireplace. He laid her down carefully on the plush bed and pulled the thickest blanket he could find over her. For the first time in years, Miles Hartley felt helpless. He sat by her side, brushing her hand with his thumb. It felt so small in his, cold, but alive. He reached for a damp cloth and carefully cleaned the residue from her arms and shoulders. Every touch was slow, careful, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper he couldn't name yet. Hours passed like minutes. He didn't leave her side. He barely blinked. Finally, her eyes fluttered open, confused, dazed, unfocused. "Where?" Her voice was a whisper, raw and dry. "You're safe," Miles said gently, gripping her hand just a little tighter. "You passed out. You were on the floor. He stopped. His voice broke again. "I found you like that." Brina tried to sit up, but he gently stopped her. "Don't, just rest." She looked down, suddenly realizing what had happened, what he had seen. Embarrassment flushed her face. She tried to pull the coat tighter around herself, shrinking into the bed. Her eyes glistened with something deeper than shame. Fear. "I didn't mean for you to see that," she whispered. I was cleaning in the fumes. I couldn't breathe. My skin burned. I had to get it off. And then I don't remember anything else." Her voice cracked, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry. I was just trying to do my job. Please don't fire me." Miles's heart twisted. She wasn't worried about her safety. She was worried about losing a paycheck. He knelt beside her and met her eyes for the first time. Really met them. "You're not fired, Brina," he said softly. "You're human, and you scared the hell out of me." Tears welled up in her eyes and she turned her face away, unable to believe his kindness. But in that quiet room, with the fire gently crackling and the air thick with unspoken emotions, something shifted. Not pity. Care. Genuine, raw, and powerful. And though Brina lay there weak and exposed, and Miles sat beside her with more questions than answers, both knew, in that quiet, flickering light, this was the beginning of something neither of them expected. Brina Wilson's eyes fluttered open as the sun dipped below the trees outside, casting golden shadows across the mansion's grand living room. The heat from the fireplace flickered gently across the ceiling, and the thick blanket wrapped around her felt unfamiliar, not scratchy or cheap, but soft, caring. She tried to sit up and immediately pain flared across her arms. She winced, biting her lip. Her skin was red and blotchy like it had been scorched. And then she saw him. Miles Hartley, the cold billionaire, sitting across from her in an armchair, coat off, sleeves rolled up, a steaming cup of untouched tea in his hand. His eyes were on her, watching her every move, not with judgment, but with concern. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He had called the doctor. She remembered hearing voices, footsteps, the prick of something cool on her skin, but she had begged them not to call anyone else, not to make this bigger than it was. And Miles, surprisingly, had listened. Now the room was silent again, heavy with something unspoken. Brina looked down at her arms, at the burns blooming like angry roses across her skin. Shame crawled up her throat. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Miles leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "For what?" She swallowed hard. "For being careless, for the mess, for all of it." He was quiet, listening. Her hands trembled as she gripped the blanket tighter, bracing herself. "You deserve the truth. I owe you that much." She inhaled shakily, eyes cast toward the floor. "I have a skin condition. Rare. Stupid, really. My skin reacts badly to certain chemicals. It's been manageable for years, but last week I ran out of my usual cleaning products." Her voice cracked. "I didn't have enough money to buy more. The safe kind is expensive, so I bought cheaper ones." Her eyes glistened with humiliation. "I thought I'd be careful. I didn't think it would hurt me so fast." Miles leaned back, stunned, not by her confession, but by her bravery in sharing it. She kept going. "When it started burning, I panicked. I tried to wash it off, but it got worse. I couldn't breathe. I stripped off my clothes to stop it from spreading. I guess I passed out." She looked up at him then, and what he saw in her eyes nearly broke him. Not weakness, fear. Real, raw fear, not of pain, but of losing her job, of being thrown out, of going unseen. "I didn't tell you," she whispered, "because I was scared. I thought if you found out, you'd fire me. And I need this job. I'm not lazy, Mr. Hartley. I'm just trying." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not dramatic, just quiet, as if she was used to holding them in until no one could see. Miles stared at her, heart pounding. Not out of pity, but something far more dangerous. Something he didn't understand. Something that frightened him now. In that moment, this woman, who had spent months blending into the corners of his house, suddenly stood out more brightly than anyone he'd ever known. She had risked her health to keep a job cleaning his home. She had faced pain, fear, and humiliation, just to survive. And he'd never even asked her name with interest before. He looked at her differently now, not as the cleaner, but as a woman who carried herself with quiet strength, with dignity in the face of desperation. Still, he said nothing. He didn't trust his voice. So instead, he walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and brought it to her, setting it gently on the table beside her. She looked up, her lashes wet, her lips parted to say thank you. But before she could speak, he said, almost too quietly, "You should have told me." "I thought you didn't care," she whispered back. And for the first time in his life, Miles Hartley wished he'd been someone worth trusting sooner. As she sipped the water with shaking hands, he sat back down, studying her face. She didn't need saving, she needed someone who saw her. And tonight, for the first time, Miles did. The morning after Brina's confession, the house felt different. Miles Hartley sat alone in his grand study, a book open on his desk, but his eyes weren't on the words. They were somewhere else, with the woman asleep in the guest suite, wrapped in blankets he had chosen himself. He didn't understand what had happened. Or rather, he did. But the way it made him feel was what left him stunned. Something inside him had shifted, subtly, quietly, but undeniably. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't consumed with market shares, numbers, or power. Instead, he was thinking about Brina Wilson, about her pain, her strength, and how close he had come to losing someone he never realized he needed. He had always believed emotions were dangerous, that caring meant weakness. But now he understood the truth. Indifference was far more destructive. That very morning, he picked up the phone and called her doctor, not his assistant, not his staff. He did it himself. He wanted answers. He wanted to understand her condition, her needs, her risks. And he listened. He spent hours reading, researching, learning about what chemicals could harm her, what ingredients to avoid. He cross-checked every product in the mansion, and when he saw how many were unsafe, he didn't hesitate. He had them all thrown out, every last bottle. He called in a professional cleaning team, one that specialized in organic, non-toxic, hypoallergenic materials. He ordered them to scrub the mansion top to bottom and to never return with harmful products again. Then he did something that shocked everyone on his payroll. He gave Brina paid leave, full salary, no expectations. Rest, heal, he told her. Your job will be here when you're ready. Brina had stared at him like he was someone else, like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. And perhaps she didn't, because the man who once ran his world with cold logic and silent rules was becoming someone new. Someone who saw people, someone who felt. While Brina recovered at her sister's tiny apartment 2 towns over, Miles found himself missing things he never expected to notice. The faint hum of her soft humming in the halls, the clink of her bucket, the smell of clean linen after she left. And more than anything, he missed the quiet peace she brought with her, the stillness that didn't feel empty. He didn't know how to explain it. He only knew that the mansion, his kingdom, felt darker without her. So he did something else, something deeply uncharacteristic. He went to the florist. He picked the flowers himself. Tulips because they were gentle, peonies because they were soft, and a single white daisy, the simplest, most unassuming flower he could find, like Brina. He arranged them across the kitchen himself. It took him an hour. He cursed under his breath when the vase tipped over twice, but he kept going. And finally, when it was all perfect, he sat down and wrote something by hand. A single note, no long speeches, no dramatic gestures, just 8 simple words. You matter more than this house ever will, M. He placed the note on the kitchen counter, where he knew she'd see it first. Then he waited. Days passed, and then one golden morning, Brina returned. She stepped into the mansion slowly, unsure if she still belonged. Her fingers trembled as she held her coat closed, her heart pounding. But the moment she walked into the kitchen, her breath caught. The flowers, the colors, the softness, and then the note. She read it once, then twice, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not out of politeness, but out of something far deeper, because Brina had been invisible for most of her life, forgotten, overlooked, seen only for what she could do, not who she was. But someone had noticed. Miles had noticed. And that morning, with sunlight pouring through the window and petals brushing against the counter, Brina realized the cold man was no longer made of stone. He was changing for her. And though neither of them said it aloud yet, both of them knew. This wasn't just kindness. It was the beginning of something far more powerful, love. The snow hadn't come, but the chill in the air was sharp and biting. Outside the towering windows of the mansion, a deep winter silence had settled, thick and still. Even the trees seemed frozen in place, as if the entire world had paused. Inside, everything was warm, except the light. The power had gone out an hour ago. Miles Hartley stood near the fireplace, sleeves rolled up, coaxing the old stone hearth to life. He didn't like asking for help, not even from machines. But tonight, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt shared. Brina sat cross-legged on the thick rug nearby, wrapped in a soft throw, her cheeks pink from the cold. The firelight danced across her features, casting gentle shadows that made her eyes look impossibly deep. The flickering glow softened the sharp lines of the mansion and brought a kind of warmth it had never known. No phones, no lights, no distractions, just the quiet crackle of fire. And them. They didn't speak for a while. They didn't need to. Then softly, Brina broke the silence. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice low, thoughtful. "You don't even like people." Miles didn't flinch. He didn't scoff or dismiss the question, like he once would have. Instead, he stared into the flames as if the answer might be hidden inside them. After a long moment, he said, "I don't know," but his voice held more than uncertainty. It held pain, memory. "Maybe because no one helped me when I needed it." Brina's eyes didn't leave his face. Something in her heart clenched. Not out of pity, but recognition. She waited. Miles leaned back against the stone of the fireplace, folding his arms loosely across his chest. His voice was quiet, but steady. "I grew up in a house that didn't believe in softness. My father thought emotions were weaknesses. He taught me that men who cry are men who lose. That kindness is currency people waste." Brina listened without blinking, absorbing every word. "My mother barely spoke," he continued. "She just existed. Cold dinners, cold smiles, cold rules. I was expected to build empires, not relationships. I learned early how to wear a suit, how to win, how to close a deal, but not how to feel." He paused, jaw tightening. "After a while, I didn't even realize I'd built walls so high, even I couldn't see over them." The fire popped, and for a brief moment, Brina thought he might stop there. But he didn't. "I spent years thinking I was better off alone. That control was safer than connection. That silence meant strength." He looked at her now, really looked at her. "Then you passed out on my floor, and everything I believed shattered in a second." Brina's breath caught. "I didn't just help you because it was the right thing," he said. "I did it because I saw myself in you, alone, hurting, pushing through something no one should face alone. And it made me realize—" He trailed off. Brina tilted her head. "Realize what?" "That maybe, just maybe, someone should have helped me too." The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't the heavy kind of silence anymore. It was soft, mutual, healing. Brina didn't speak right away. She reached for her mug, cold now, then set it down. Her hand trembled slightly, not from the temperature, but from the weight of what she'd just heard. "No one helped me either," she said gently. "When I was younger, when I lost my mom, it was just me and my sister. And the world didn't slow down to ask if I was okay. I learned to survive, to smile even when I felt invisible." She looked into the fire, her voice growing even softer. "So I understand walls. I just never thought I'd meet someone else behind theirs." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something changed. Not love, not yet, but something even more important. Trust. The kind built not from shared joy, but from shared pain. The kind that doesn't need grand gestures or spoken promises, just the quiet, steady knowledge that someone sees you. Miles stood and walked over, then slowly sat down beside her on the rug. Their shoulders brushed. He didn't pull away. They sat that way for what felt like hours, fire warming their skin, silence warming their hearts. And as the flames flickered and the night grew deeper, both Brina and Miles felt something neither had felt in a very long time. Safe. Winter melted into spring, and with each passing week the mansion on the hill seemed a little less cold. The halls, once echoing and sterile, now held the soft sounds of life, gentle footsteps, quiet laughter, and music drifting faintly from the kitchen radio Brina liked to turn on while she worked. Not loud, just enough to make the silence feel alive. Brina stayed, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Miles never asked her to. He didn't have to. They fell into a rhythm, unspoken, steady, and warm. Every Friday evening, Miles joined her for dinner. No staff, no suits, just home-cooked food and two people learning what comfort really meant. He'd sit at the island while she stirred soup or chopped vegetables, and sometimes he'd offer to help. She'd laugh when he sliced onions wrong or forgot to stir the pasta, but she never mocked him. Instead, she taught him, with patience and gentle teasing, and he listened, hungry for something he hadn't even known he was missing. And over time, he changed. He laughed more, smiled, not the polite kind, but the real kind. The kind that creased the corners of his eyes and softened the sharp edges of his face. He began asking Brina for advice, not just about the house, but about life. He showed her books and asked what she liked to read. He showed her art pieces and asked what she saw. He stood in front of paint swatches with her in the kitchen, letting her pick the warm yellows and soft greens she said would make the space feel like a hug. And she was right. The mansion began to breathe again. Brina, too, bloomed. Her steps grew lighter, her voice more confident. She no longer flinched when she shared her ideas. She no longer looked down when she spoke. Because someone, at last, was listening. Then, one quiet evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the windows gold, Brina walked into the kitchen with something hidden behind her back. Miles sat at the island, a coffee mug in hand, a soft smile already on his face just from watching her. "What are you hiding?" he asked. Brina gave him a playful look. "Something for you." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it going to bite me?" She laughed. "Only if you hang it wrong." And then she held it out. A small wooden plaque, hand-painted with careful brush strokes and warm, earthy tones. The words stopped his breath. "Kindness sees no class, no color, no walls." Miles stared at it. He didn't speak, didn't blink. Just held it in his hands like something fragile, something holy. Brina bit her lip, unsure if she'd gone too far. "I made it last week. Thought it might go above the kitchen door. But if it's too much, I can—" "No," he said quickly, his voice low but firm. He looked up at her, his eyes shimmering in a way she had never seen before. "It's not too much. It's everything." And without another word, Miles stood, found a small nail in the utility drawer and hung it himself, right above the kitchen doorway where anyone entering the heart of the house would see it. He stepped back beside her, both of them staring up at the sign in silence. "You really believe that?" he asked her softly. Brina nodded. "With all my heart." Miles swallowed, his voice thick. "I didn't before. I used to think walls protected me. That class separated people for a reason. That silence was strength." He turned to her, something unspoken building behind his eyes. "But now, I think I was just afraid. Afraid to care. Afraid to feel. Afraid to see people as more than roles they filled in my life." Brina reached out and gently touched his hand. "You see now," she whispered. "I do," he replied. And in that moment, in the glow of the kitchen light, with a painted sign above them and their hearts quietly open, something bloomed between them. Not lust, not fantasy. Love. The kind built not in a whirlwind, but in the warmth of healing, in shared pain, in trust, in mutual respect. And that night, as Brina made tea and Miles stood behind her just to listen to the rhythm of her voice, the man who once ruled an empire with iron-cold silence learned that the truest power wasn't money or control. It was kindness. It was seeing someone and being seen. And as the fire crackled in the other room and laughter filled the space that once knew only echoing footsteps, the mansion on the hill finally felt like a home, because even the coldest heart can melt when touched by the right hands.